Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Unscripted. I'm Anuli.
I'm Hannah.
And today we're going to be talking about how to power through tough times. And obviously, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. And if that's not enough, that's putting a lot of emotional pressure on us. You know, we're all anxious. We're really scared about what's going to happen. And it's hard enough that we also have to do our school and classes and everything, work, jobs, everything. So we're trying to make sure that we have ways that we can stay focused and stay productive and how to power through these tough times. So Hannah, I wanted to ask you, is there anything specifically difficult that you've been through during these times?
Yeah, so I'm sure, like a lot of other people out there, my initial plans for the summer were canceled. I had one of my dream internships lined up
Mm-hmm.
for this summer, and it was canceled in a matter of a day, basically, with no warning. And I mean, it's not that I couldn't see it coming. I knew we were in the middle of a pandemic, but basically I had to figure out, okay, what's next? And we can talk about that a little more during the bounce back. But
Mm-hmm.
basically, of course, I was disappointed that the internship was canceled, but I knew I had other things I would be working on. Since then, I have gotten a new internship, which I will hopefully be able to tell you guys more about
Yes.
later on. But I knew, I was like, okay, you know what? I have my music I can work on. I
Mm-hmm.
have, I want to study for the GRE, the test that you take for graduate school admissions. I have a bunch of other things I am looking forward to learning more about, even just for my own benefit. Even to do those things, though, if you're going through a tough time, that can be difficult. Um,
Absolutely.
you can have bad things happen to you, and still there will be people that have it worse. But that's okay to still feel some type of way about it and to still be going through the motions. Um, what I think, though, we need to think about is how long should you let yourself go through those motions? So oftentimes we talk about how long we should allow ourselves to go through the motions. Maybe you've had a breakup or something, you'll hear, okay, give yourself 2 days, 2 weeks, however long to get over it. But how feasible is that? Anuli, how feasible do you think it is to be able to set a time limit on how long you should allow yourself to kind of let your emotions flow in a tough time?
I personally think that it's really important to embrace the whole process of grieving. And I don't know if it's possible to put any kind of a time limit on that because, some people after something happens or after they're emotionally affected by an incident, for some people, they may not be able to react at all. So they kind of push it to the back of their minds. And then grieving happens later. Maybe it could be a couple weeks later. It could be a couple months later, maybe some years later. Or some people, immediately after something happens or after they're emotionally affected by something, they have an immediate reaction to it. So depending on how you react to it, I think it's very important at the bottom of it all to give yourself time to bounce back. So, for example, during this whole global pandemic, when we were supposed to be self-isolating and quarantined, I lost my grandfather. And that was probably one of the toughest things that I've ever had to do because, we weren't allowed to leave the country. We weren't allowed to leave our homes. And so I was one of those people that had an immediate reaction. So I was really disturbed. I was crying a lot. And then I gave myself a period of time to cry. And I was like, you know what, it's fine to just let it all out. And it's okay, because again, like I said, grieving is a process. And if you try to shut all of your emotion in and you're like, it's fine, I'm strong, like I'm not going to let this bother me, it's only going to do you more harm because it's going to keep eating away at you. So it's important to let yourself feel whatever you're feeling and tell yourself that it's okay. But it's also important to figure out the different ways that you can pick yourself back up, because I don't know if I would be okay with indefinitely grieving, because I would want to be comfortable with my emotions, and after a point, I'd want to move on. So that's what we're going to be talking about soon, which is how to bounce back and the different ways that we can, bounce back in our lives and move on from incidences. Or I don't know if move on would be a great term, but rather move around those incidences and move forward. Is there anything you want to add before that, or we can move on?
I would just add really quickly, like what you were saying, allow yourself to feel that way. And I would say because we all grieve differently and over different things, like something might affect somebody more than somebody else.
Right.
So we can't really set these wide standards.
Mm-hmm.
But once you feel like, okay, I want to get past this, but I can't, that's when you need to start making an active effort to, be productive. Or once it's hindering your life in ways that you don't want it to, it's like, I can't be missing any more meetings, not because it's like my boss will be mad at me or something or like that, but I don't feel like myself. I don't feel like
Right.
whatever that is that you want to change. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. I agree. So with bouncing back, Hannah, do you have any ideas or do you have things that you do to bounce back? We all have moments in our lives where, we all have days in our lives where we're just like, I just don't feel it today. And not feeling it can come from a lot of things, can stem from a lot of things, right? It could be something really terrible, or it could just be an awful day in general, like nothing specific, but you're just not feeling it today.
Yeah.
So what are some things that you do to bounce back from those days?
Yeah. So I think about whenever something isn't going my way or whatever, I think about the times where it didn't go my way, but it actually helped me more in the end. And if it happened before, it could happen again. And it's happening right now. I lost my dream internship, but I might have just gotten the one I needed. Or say I didn't even have this one, I could make a new song that's going to, go viral and become a hit. Like, we don't know what I can do with this newfound time. And that is something that you always have to try and work on, because I hate when people say, oh, everything happens for a reason. Like, sometimes I don't need to see that reason. Like, I don't care. I don't care what that could possibly be, because things didn't go the way I wanted them to go. But I'm sure, Anuli, has there ever been a time in your life when something didn't go the way you planned, but it went just the way it needed to?
A lot of times. And believe me, it's not even just like, oh, 1 week later, I knew it was better for me. It's years and years. Like, for years, I would question, okay, maybe that wasn't the right thing to do. And then a couple of years later, I'd be like, okay, if I hadn't taken that decision, then I probably wouldn't be where I am today. And there's been so many of those. And I love that you said that, maybe it's not something that you want, but you'll definitely get something that you needed, because I'm a firm believer in that. I feel like, obviously with me and the universe talk and everything, like, I think that the universe is always plotting to do the best for you. And one way to really let that happen to you is to completely ease into it, Always, I feel like it's really important to be fluid, and that's also something that I'm learning as well. But and being fluid doesn't mean just do whatever, or don't like have any sense of boundaries or whatever. Being fluid means knowing what you want, but also being okay with what you have, and constantly keep readjusting to your newer goals, to newer ambitions that you have, and constantly keep moving. It's really important. If you're having a stagnant day, it's okay to not do something that's on the top of your priority list if it's not a time-bound issue or anything. But don't just sit around moping is what I don't do. I hate just sitting around moping. Maybe it's, if I need to have a good cry, I'll have a good cry. I'll listen to music that'll force me to cry. I'll be on my balcony. I'll just cry it all out, and I'll feel better, and I'll move on to doing something else. So it doesn't necessarily have to be pushing yourself to do the best. Being fluid is, what are your circumstances right now? If I'm not feeling the greatest, but what do I feel like doing? If it's not, I want to do my homework, but do I really feel like it? No. So what am I going to move on to? Maybe listen to music or write. That's what I've been doing a lot lately, because, I've been feeling blah lately. So that's what I've been doing a lot lately. And I just feel like, understanding the fluidity of your mind and letting it just flow and doing whatever you feel like.
Yeah. And this might be starting to flow into the being productive and how to start that, because we could always go back and forth between the two, because I feel like they're really related. But when you're feeling down, even if it's nothing catastrophic that's just happened to you, but like you're just having a down day or a down week, or you don't know why you're feeling some type of way, try and find out those little ways that maybe things are getting to you, and maybe your boss is always picking on you for some reason, and maybe that might be an indication of you need a change in career path, or maybe you're realizing the thing that you don't like in the boss is something that you don't like in yourself.
Yeah.
That has certainly happened to me, where I'm like, I find that thing so annoying about them. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, wait, I'm the same way. So, right. But if you do need to find ways to start getting yourself motivated,
mm-hmm.
you don't have to take a huge step that day. Do little things that you're going to be proud of. Make your bed if that's something you don't do. Wash the dishes as soon as you finish using them. You can start off with the little things, and when you get accustomed to that feeling, you're going to be more prepared to take on those larger tasks.
100%. I definitely agree.
So how do you get yourself motivated, Anuli, when you're not feeling so great, or you're not in the mood to?
Oh man, I'm still working on it, to be honest, but something that really gets me going, and I've recently figured this out about myself, is making little to-do lists or checklists of what I have to do during my day. And now, before, my checklist would only be my bigger goals, right? So my bigger goal is to get all of this studying done, all my homework done, I don't know, all of the important stuff, or the seemingly important stuff that I think is super important to be done during the day. And the one little change that I made to my to-do list recently is to also include the little things, like you said. If doing dishes is on my list, put it on the list. And when you check it off, when you start checking things off one by one, no matter how mundane, no matter how silly you think they are, when you see that list more than half completed, it's going to mess with your brain in a good way, and you're going to start wanting to finish and check off your checklist by the end of the day. And I feel like that's been really working for me, and I think that's super important. And another thing that I feel is really important is something that I was telling you about earlier, is focusing more on short-term goals instead of long-term goals. Now, a problem that most procrastinators, including myself, have is every time I'm like, okay, I'm going to study for this test, but wait a minute, the test is 4 months away. I still have 4 months. It's a lot. Like, it's all right. But if I set a smaller goal, like, okay, if I finish like studying half of the material today, then I reward myself with a movie or something that I like doing. And those short-term goals help me finish faster, because if I look at my long-term goals, it's going to be like, 4 months, like it's whatever. Like, I'm not going to do it like 48 hours before my exam, like whatever. But if I set shorter goals, I'm like, okay, I get to do it tonight. So I'm going to, get my work done as soon as possible. So I feel like those are some things that have worked for me. What about you?
I definitely think to-do lists, like you were saying, are really helpful. Sometimes I find if I can't sleep at night because I'm thinking of how much I have to do, I'll write like a to-do list in my phone, and I will fall asleep instantaneously after that, because you can see, okay, wait, this is only 7 things. The world is not going to end. I can do this, even if not only tomorrow, then by the end of the week or whenever it is. Also, another point I wanted to ask you about is, have you maybe ever felt unhappy because of how your productivity, or because of the work that you needed to do? I know that this past semester, I wasn't able to have as much fun as I would have liked to, hanging out with my friends, going to club meetings and everything like that. I think I probably went to like 1 club meeting per club that I'm in with all of my friends, because I had my goal set to get all A's this semester. That was it. And when school shut down, I was like, I really didn't hang out with some of my friends for the whole semester, and I was just so upset at myself about that. And did I accomplish my goal? Thankfully, yes.
Yeah.
But at what cost?
Yeah.
So have you ever felt like, have you ever felt unhappy because you knew you had these goals on your shoulder, but you were sacrificing something else in service of them?
I don't know if I was unhappy with the sacrifice. I feel like if I'm, dead set in pursuit of a goal, then I don't think I'm unhappy with the sacrifices that go with it. I feel like I am unhappy for different reasons. And I think I personally, and I don't know if this is ever going to relate to what we're talking about personally, but for me, my low moments are because I think most of my mood changes involve like being sensitive to the news and the media, which has been a lot lately, with the global pandemic, and there's news coming up every day. And so that's usually something that messes with me more than anything. So that messes with my productivity. But is it like feeling a certain way about like not being able to do other things in pursuit of my goals? I feel like my battle is more about like being sensitive to the news and just people around me in general. So yeah, that's something that I always try to work on. I always try to work on conserving my energy with stuff like that. And again, like I said, I've never really felt because I feel like sacrifices are for a reason, right? They're in one way, I tend to think of it as they're making you a better person. They're making you somebody that you want to see 10 years later, and they're making you who you're meant to be. And when I think about it like that, there's no sacrifice that I'd ever like feel bad about. I'd always like try to make time for people outside of my little time slots that I reserve for my work. But like personally, I never like regret anything that I've done for work. Yeah. How do you deal with those feelings? So for you, like when you feel like, oh, I wish I was hanging out with my friends more and stuff like that. How do you deal with that?
So, I would still try and make time, even if it was just doing homework while they were doing whatever the club was doing. Like I'd sit in the back and just be present there. But even then, that could only happen once in a while, just because of how busy of a semester this was. I think I only really started to feel like kind of upset that I didn't hang out with them when we physically could not hang out with them anymore. And I'm like, wow, I really like, look at what happened. Now I can't even see him if I wanted to. And so now that we're talking about it, I'm just thinking like, imagine how mothers, like working mothers, feel when it's like they want to get the executive office, but they also want to go to their kids' play. Like, what do they do? Or working parents, working anybody's. It doesn't even have to be moms. So I guess that's going to be a different hurdle. And then that could be another podcast with how to maintain balance between the two. Yeah. I mean, for the amount, in the clubs I'm a part of at school, it was like we have practices 3 times a week for 2 hours each one. And I'm a part of multiple clubs like that. So that would be a lot of time out of my day. Right. There's not really a feasible, for the amount of work that we had to do this semester, I had no feasible balance for it and my goals. But I guess I'm not sure. I think it also depends on if you have people who are understanding of your goals and supportive of that. Exactly. If they were making me feel bad about it, that would be an indication that, well, wait a minute. Yeah. Maybe you're not here for me the same way I thought you were. So how do you handle if you feel like more affected by the news and like outside things like that? How do you handle that? Do you not watch the news? Do you only watch certain channels? Like, how do you handle that?
Oh boy. So honestly, I'm still figuring out how to deal with it, because I like physically, and it's very visible and conspicuous that my mood shifts, and I just like, lose a lot of my positivity to all of this negativity in the world. And I think like one way that I try to make myself feel better is understanding that I'm working hard to build a better world. I'm not working hard to earn all of this money for myself. And I feel like we've talked about this before, like that's primarily also our goal, to bring about like better changes in the world. So that keeps me motivated. Like, it makes me sad, really sad to see what's going on in the world right now, but also just the fact that giving myself good education, which is why I feel education is so important. And I feel like we obviously talked about this in our podcast before, but we'll link it up here because I know how to link stuff now.
Hey.
But yeah, so that's why, like, the power of education teaches you the things that you can do, so that you can build a better world for yourself and for, you know, the future generations. So that, honestly, I'm not even like making this up to sound dramatic or something. Like, that's genuinely what keeps me going. Like, the last 2 days have been very taxing on my emotional health because of all the news that's been circulating. And I feel like I've just been constantly telling myself, it's all right, you know, I'm going to work really hard, and, you know, I'm going to make sure that when I leave the world, I'm going to leave it a little better for people in the future. So that's how I tend to deal with it. And also, you know, like I talked about short-term goals. So this is a long-term goal. For short-term, I, you know, like doing things that make me calm. So like I mentioned before, writing is something that I've taken up recently. And every time I feel really overloaded with emotion, I just like pour it all out. And it doesn't have to be like a beautiful artistic piece, right? It could just be a mix of emotion. It could be whatever thought. Like, you could talk about somebody's cat for 2 seconds, and then you can talk about how much your heart needs to heal. Like, it's all right. Just this, like, it's like a brain dump, you know, just whatever is in your brain, just put it on a piece of paper or on a Word doc and just let it all out. And that way, you know, you're probably going to feel a little less heavy emotionally, especially if you're as sensitive to outside energies as me.
Yeah. It's talking about being sensitive to outside energies. And we were talking about this a little bit earlier too. It's surrounding yourself with people who are motivated in order to try and get you motivated, even if you're not feeling that way. Yeah, like you said in the podcast before, sitting in the library. You want to talk about the website that you were telling me about?
Sure. So it's really embarrassing because I don't even remember what website it is, but I'm going to try really hard to find it for you guys so I can link it down in the descriptions below, so you guys can take a look at it. But it's a really cool website. It's like an online library kind of an experience. So you get to be in a room, virtual room, with a lot of people, and, you know, you can choose to do whatever. You can choose to have your video on or share your screen so you're held accountable for what you're doing, not on YouTube. And you can choose to do whatever, and they use the 15-minute or the 25-minute Pomodoro technique. So you study for like 20 or 25 minutes, and then you have a 5 or 15-minute break, and then you do another studying bit for 25 minutes. So it's like, and it's for everyone. So, you know, you have people that are doing the same thing as you. They're studying with you, technically, virtually. And I feel, like I said before, people like me like thrive in environments where I have people that are like-minded. And if I'm studying, like, I want everyone around me studying. I cannot study with people, you know, jumping around in front of me. So I tried that out during winter break last year or this year. Well, kind of. And it worked out really well for me because I was like, you know, this is amazing. I don't even have to be physically present in a library. Like, I could just watch all these people doing work and I'm motivated, you know? So that really worked out for me, and I hope I can find the website at some point for you guys, but I'll definitely link it below.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, so recently for a class where we had to write several like 20-page long papers, we were all writing on the same topic. It was for like a U.S. Supreme Court kind of class. A couple of friends and I who were friends, you know, I made in the class, we had a group chat on iMessage, and we'd be like, it'd be 9:30 at night. Anybody want to go hop on Zoom for emotional support when writing this paper? And it was always like a yes, or we would all schedule times throughout the week, like, okay, I can Zoom call on Wednesday at 3 and then Thursday at 4 or whatever it is. We didn't plan to talk. We only planned to go on Zoom with each other, mute mic, turn off video, but we knew that we were working there together and could unmute each other at any time to say hi or ask a question or something like that.
Right.
So if that's something maybe you need to do too with your other friends, be like, listen, we're not talking, no spilling of tea, no kikiing or whatever. Like, we're using this time strictly for being productive, and then afterwards we can reward ourselves with
Yeah.
with having fun and hanging
And
out. That's exactly, that's the motivation. Unlike Anuli and I, who talked to you for an hour and a half before filming.
Oh my God. Yeah. Guilty. But
Oh my goodness. But this is different.
I definitely like that. And I 100% agree. I feel like it's just something with the mindset, you know, like you just, when you have like-minded people around you, it definitely helps your brain to boost up and do things that you want to be productive with.
And you have to, if you don't have it already, you have to cultivate that kind of mindset of wanting to level up. Because if you're not feeling up for a challenge, surround yourself with people who are going to inspire you to take that challenge on for yourself.
Yeah.
All of my friends, in some way, I want to be more like them. I want to be more caring like them. I want to be more patient like this other one, or whatever it is. So if you're looking for people who are going to help you increase your academics, surround yourself with friends who are going to inspire you to do that.
Absolutely. And I think, like you said, you know, we're talking about productivity and focus and working hard. That's also like a muscle that needs to be exercised. Like, it needs to be developed. Like, no one's born with razor sharp focus. Definitely not me, unfortunately. But, you know, that's something that we have to keep working on. We have to keep exercising every day. And it's okay to slip. You know, it's fine. And again, like, forgive yourself, be easy with yourself, but also don't ever give up. Like, keep working on it every single day, because I think, like, it's so important to develop those skills early on.
Yeah. Try to remember the feeling you had when your hard work paid off sometime in the past. Like, guaranteed there's at least one time in your life where you tried to do something and you succeeded, and you remember how that felt. If you feel like you can't remember a time, then maybe put yourself in a new environment, because I'm sure it's happened at least once.
Yeah.
And again, like we were saying earlier, with these little steps, you're going to remember what that feeling is like and want to have more of it. It's like a drug when you, like, success is like that, you know, and that's why you always want to keep going and have new things to achieve and things like that.
Yeah. I think what you said, we talked about the little checklist that I'm talking about. Like, you will see that success is a drug when you will want to physically start checking off things on that checklist. No matter how big or small, you're like, whatever, this is it, this is what I'm doing. And I wanted to supplement our conversation with an important fact that I was reading the other day, and I didn't know that this was true. Apparently, you know, the things that we say we don't want to do, like why people procrastinate rather, is if there's like one chapter that I really don't want to do, my brain is somehow subconsciously going to associate reading that chapter with a feeling of pain. And that's why you don't want to do it. It's not really the task itself. It's really how you think about it. So again, it's all about, coming back to what you said, it's about building that mindset. You know, you have to teach your brain that that's not pain. It's fine. It's hard. It's a hard task. It needs a lot of focus, but it's not pain. And that's why every time with procrastination, every time you try to do something, you constantly move away to something that's easier to your brain. Like watching TV, that's no pain, right? So you keep moving away from things that really need to be done to things that are comfortable. And building a focused mindset, building a success mindset is all about moving away from things that make you comfortable.
And also, as you're saying that, you made me think of like how the more you grow accustomed to this, the more you get used to the failures too. The great thing about having a checklist of things to do is that one or two failures isn't going to stop you from achieving the other 10 things on your checklist.
Right.
And sometimes when we're scared about taking that risk, scared to do that thing, scared to write that resume up or send the cover letter, is because we might be scared that we're not going to get the job. So why are we going to put ourselves out there to begin with? But again, it's cultivating that. It's exercising your mind to be like, I know it's going to hurt, whether it's doing the work now and or getting the job later. I know it's going to be a painful process, but it has to be the good kind of pain. It has to be the pain worth doing to have the to get gains.
Yeah.
Exercise world.
Nothing in this world comes without hard work. You know, that's something that my parents have always told me, right, from when I was growing up. Like, I'm like, I don't want to do this. It's so hard. And they're like, but nothing comes without hard work. And that's the kind of mindset that I've always been raised with. And I think that was really important because now I know for a fact that genuinely nothing comes without you actually, you know, moving your muscles and working for it. Well, one thing that I also wanted to talk about was accountability. Now, because given this specific situation, you know, with the pandemic, most of us are at home or maybe we're self-isolating with our buddies. I think it's really important to have people in your life that can help you hold yourself accountable. So if, for example, you're at home, I know better than most people how hard it can be to focus when you're at home. I cannot, for that matter, but it's important to find people that you can either, you know, do group study sessions with or productive sessions with, or maybe talk to your parents and tell them, here's what I'm going to do for the next 2 hours. Check in with me at the end of 2 hours and see where I'm at. And if it's not a good place, then yell at me or I don't know, some sort of a negative reinforcement or positive reinforcement, whatever. But there needs to be somebody that holds you accountable. If you're not capable of holding yourself accountable, you know, obviously reach out to people that you can trust, you know, your friends, your family, and have them hold you accountable. So that definitely fuels productivity because you have somebody to answer to.
That's very true. Half the time, when I know, like, if I keep something to myself, a goal to myself, I'm not going to do it. Whether it's sending somebody an email, drafting up some sort of proposal or whatever, I know I have to respond to my boss, respond to my friend, respond to my mom or whoever it is, saying, great, I'll have it to you by 4 or I'll have it to you by whatever time. Right. Because I know if I don't do that, it's not happening. When we get back to the school year, or if you are doing school in the summer, if it has to be a matter of setting up meetings during office hours with the professors, that's how I make sure I get my papers done. Is I have to have something to show my professor come Monday morning if the essay is due on Wednesday, so that I know I'm not doing it only on Tuesday night because I have that meeting set up with her for Monday. So that's very true. That's the nail on the head with finding people to hold you accountable, even if it's just telling somebody, putting it out there in the universe that you're going to have something done by a certain time is a great way to also stop the procrastinating.
Yeah. And I think adding on to that, I think like maybe even planning and using planners or like physically written goals will help. Because for me, sometimes I like using planners because then I'm like, okay, what was on my checklist? And if by the end of the day, the boxes are not checked, I'm like, what did I do all day then? You know, and it's kind of embarrassing to look at yourself after that, like you did nothing all day. Especially if you're a workaholic and, you know, you love doing work. I think it's important to just, like we said, at the base of it all, just have something to hold you accountable.
I agree. Phew. So we talked a lot about productivity and powering through the tough times. So to give a brief summary before we finish up and close out, first we started talking about what are the tough times and how long should we let ourselves get through them, how to identify them.
And then we talked about how it's okay to take the time that you need to grieve or take the time to feel whatever it is you're feeling, but also make sure you find a way to work around it or a way to work through it because you don't want to be in your feelings for too long. Of course, that being said, take as much time as you need, but it's important to not let those feelings overpower your life.
Exactly. Once they start inhibiting your authentic self and who you want to be, you have to start finding ways to bounce back. And that's what we talked about next. Kind of how to start to get yourself motivated, how to see the bright side or potential wins from the loss that you've just taken. Right.
And speaking of potential wins, we discussed if we want to make them short-term or long-term. And it's important to have both, but it's also important to know that to get through whatever you're going through right now, it's short-term goals are probably your best bet, right? Because sure, like I used the example of taking a test 2 months later, or being able to watch a movie tonight if I get my work done. So what is more appealing is the short-term goal. So it's important to look at it like that as well.
And break them down into digestible steps for you to accomplish.
Yeah.
And remember, it takes work. So if you're not feeling up to the challenge of overcoming some huge goal that you've had on your agenda, start with the little things. Start by little things that you always think it'd be so great if I did that, but I just don't do it. Making your bed, doing the dishes, and things like that.
Exactly. Okay, so with being productive, we discussed a bunch of different ways that we can all be productive. And of course, different ways work for different people. But one way you can do is, like we talked about, a checklist that you can use for yourself with even the most mundane tasks on there. So the more you check off, the easier it is to check everything off by the end of the day. And then we also talked about, having study buddies or surrounding yourself with people that have the same mindset to be productive.
Also talked about what it is that affects us and identifying that, and how to work around those, kind of like throwing it back to our earlier points about the tough times, but identifying what it is that affects us, and seeing where it fits in our life, if at all, and how it fits in with our goals.
And last but not least, we also talked about building our mindset. So like any muscle that you exercise, building your mindset, building your focus, it also needs a lot of work and determination. But with enough support, with enough self-love, and with enough courage and passion and all of those beautiful words out there, I think we can all do it. Well, so that is it for this podcast, you guys. This has been another episode of Unscripted. I'm Anuli.
I'm Hannah.
Thank you for watching.